start off on a tangent every once in a while. My pop was about 6'5" and 245, and had a razor strap that was about 8 foot long, and could reach any part of the room with it, and did. And I'm starting to tell Dick about it, and he goes, no, Jerry, let's not go there. Let's go another direction. Let's not do that. Okay, so when he first called me, he said he wanted to do a book. And I'm saying, what do you mean do a book? Well, you keep a diary and you do this, you do that, and on and on. And I says, who gets final say? He said, you do. I said, let's talk.
Let me ask you, let's back up just a little bit. Did you get to know Dick from being interviewed after the championship games? He's a New York-based writer, yep, and a well-known one, Dick Schaap. A lot of you people knew him before this. But anyway, so he got to know you a little bit that way, and he approached you about this project, right?
Yeah. He came by he was in the locker room, maybe talking, or in the dorm over at St. Norbert's, talking that morning and thinking about something with Paul's piece or something, and he went by, Jimmy Taylor and I were roommates, and he went by our door, and I was reading a poem to Jimmy. And it was probably a dangerous Dan McGrew in the face on the barroom floor or something like that. My dad used to read poetry to all the kids, but Dick stopped, turned around, came back, looked in the door, and goes, what is going on here? And come on in. So that was the beginning of everything. He started thinking about maybe I'd be a good source for a book, and it was just a incredible experience from beginning to end. So,
for those of you who may not be, and I doubt any of you are, but for those of you who may not be familiar, this was back at a time and a period where books were written on athletes and sports teams, but nothing that would take you inside the locker room like this one did. And I thought this was very interesting. Dick wanted you to just do your thoughts, put your thoughts on tape,
yeah,
every day,
yeah,
and you guys would make something of it. And it happened to be the 1967 season. The Packers had won back-to-back championships, including the first Super Bowl. And this was Lombardi's last year. We didn't know it quite at the beginning, but we had it, that was what struck the country. That's what got all of us excited, was that we're going inside the locker room, and that had never been done.
Yeah. Well, I remember talking with Dick, and he explains to me the project and the publisher we have, and on and on and on. I go, who gets final say?
Yeah.
Who's got final control? He said, you do. Let's talk. So we started to talk about it, and I didn't know where I was going or what I was doing, and I remember coming back and looking in the mirror and said, this was a horrible day. We had a real bitchy scrimmage, and Mr. Lombardi was not pleased with anything we did that day, and so we got a back chewing pretty good. And so I am putting all this down, and my roomie is giggling at me about half the time. Forrest Gregg comes in my room, and after the book is published, and he says, that damn book, everywhere I go, people want to talk about that damn book. I'll tell you one thing, old Jerry, you was dead honest. I said, Forrest, you could not have given me a better compliment.
Oh,
the guys were a little unsure of the whole thing, and I was a little unsure of the whole thing, but turned out to be quite an exercise and quite a great experience, and we're still selling it. We got a little royalty check about 3 months ago, and it's been 50-some years.
55.
55 years.
Yeah, 1968. Yeah. Jerry, the book, okay, let me just about the season, okay? For those of you who don't remember, 1967 was the year the Packers were trying to win their third consecutive world championship. It was the focal point of training camp and Lombardi's intention to get it done. You had a chance earlier in the 60s. You won in 61 and 62, and then the Bears beat you a couple of times in 63, and they went on to win it. guys have a chance. And that season, when you started with that book, did you have an inkling that something special could be happening here? Or was it just like, let's just see what we get?
I didn't know much about New York City, and I knew less about the publishing business, and I think less than that about my English capabilities. And my teachers would have been shocked too, but it was a fun game, and it was a fun life for me. I was wrapped up in it and excited about it and having a wonderful time. I just enjoyed the game and the whole atmosphere. But writing a book was somewhere out there. You know, it was not something this fat boy from Boise was going to do. It was something that a real brain or a real smart person like Wayne Larrabee might do.
You had a good writer in Dick Schaap, and
Dick was really perfect. We just got along. He would write a letter that we were supposed to write, and half of it would be Dick and half of it would be Jerry. And the next time we had something like that, a quarter would be Dick and 3/4 would be Jerry. And the next time we had something, it was all Jerry. So we worked, he was guiding me along and helping me and directing me, and so we became not only co-authors, but great friends. Yeah. And his son is named Jeremy. Yeah, and he's named after me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Jeremy, named that. Wow, that's great. Yeah, I know he calls you Uncle Jerry, still to this day. Jeremy Schaap, who's tremendous reporter. ESPN does a lot of historical, documentary stuff is the word I'm looking for. Jerry, I don't want to spend the whole time on the book, but it was a fascinating. I loved it as a kid. You and I worked later, many years later, on a project. We'll get into that later. But that season was a tremendous season of ups and downs for the Packers. We're trying to do something nobody had done in the modern era, the playoff era of the National Football League. By the way, nobody's done it since. Many great teams that we've had, no one has won 3 in a row, except your Packers team in the 60s. But as you get down to the playoffs and the Ice Bowl, and you described it so well in the book, my thought was this: as you and Dick are putting this thing together, okay, the Packers are coming down the stretch, and the Rams were a really good team, and you know they had beaten you a couple of weeks earlier, so you play them in County Stadium in Milwaukee. And then you play the Cowboys in the Ice Bowl. What if the Ice Bowl didn't go your way? What would have happened to the book? What do you think?
Well, first of all, Wayne, you can sneak up on the people your first championship. They may not see you coming, and they may not believe you're going to get there, and they may be in a variety of different positions. The second in a row, now everybody knows you're coming, and everybody's ready for you, and they're playing their heart out. They're playing their best game of the season against you. And the third one in a row is miles above that. It's just every game, every play is extremely difficult, and the guys are pumped and they're swinging and they're coming after you. So it was exponentially more difficult to win that third championship. But we had such a great group of guys, and Coach Lombardi was such a wonderful presence to keep us even keel, keep your head up, your eyes open, your mouth shut, basically was his feelings. So it just, we had, Bart was playing extremely well. Gotta say a thing about Bart. We're playing the College All-Stars in 62 or 3 or somewhere in there, and Chicago Trib is the sponsor, and they're taking care of the game. And the day of the game, I think it was on a Saturday, but the day of the game, I got up fairly early in the morning, got me a newspaper, went to the sports section, and in the back page, and there was a picture that went from top to bottom of the page, and it was Bubba Smith. Now Bubba was a young boy, about 6'8", 285. And the caption under the picture was, "Come see Bubba kill Bart."
Oh my.
Yeah,
Whoa.
yeah. And so I'm going, all he has to do is fall on somebody and they're gonna go, "Yay, whippy, look at Bubba, rah."
Oh, wow.
And so somewhere around the second quarter, the beginning of the second quarter, he gets by me. He's quicker of foot than I thought he would be, but he gets by me and he gets a hold of Bart and he goes, "All night long, old man, all night long, Bubba gonna be here on top of you." And Bart said, "Did you hear what he said?" I said, "No." Well, he tells me. And so we get in the huddle and Bart looks at me and he said, "Call a play." Who, me? I never called a play. I never called a play in high school or junior high, right? He said, "Call a play." Well, let's bring force down on him. And we gained 6 or 7 yards. And he said, "Call a play." Well, we double teamed him and then Fuzzy trapped him, and then we ran about 6 or 7 plays, and I called every play,
I
right?
had never heard that story.
I had never told it. I didn't believe it for a long time. But we got down across midfield, we go over the 40, and I've called 6 or 7 plays, right? And I look across the line of scrimmage, and Bubba's going like this. And that means, "Get me the hell out of here." And so he took himself out of the game, and we went on down the road to score. But quite an interesting moment for me, and for the team too, I'm sure,
Yeah.
right? But a lot of those moments.
You had some great moments, some great teammates. And you know, when you look at your team and your coach, you got kind of emotional about your coach that 1967 season as you guys were coming down the stretch, and you guys were the old men, and you were going for your 3rd in a row. And you know, people on the outside saw Lombardi as this tyrant and almost felt sorry for you guys, but you kind of set the record straight there. And tell us a little bit about that.
There had been a really nasty, bitchy letter to the editor or somewhere, and the newspaper had published a profile of a guy who was just slobbering down his cheek, and he was the nastiest man, and he did this, and he was a whole bunch of negatives, right? And I'm thinking about that, and I don't feel that way at all. I've had some difficult times with Coach Lombardi, but he was trying to make me a better ball player and a better human being, and I understood that, and I dealt with that. But this was kind of a backslap or backside. It was not at all correct, and I said, well, if I get a chance, if I get you never know when you're a guard, if they're going to ask you a question or throw the garbage can at you. But every once in a while they ask you a question, and I figured if I was interviewed that I would say a few words about Coach Lombardi, and I did. And I said, people don't understand Coach Lombardi. This is a beautiful man. He's all the man there is. He's a sensational coach, and he's a great human being, and we love him. And Brett Blake, who was Coach Lombardi's mentor, called him in the locker room after that game and after that interview, and Coach started to say something, and he said, "Coach, what Jerry Kramer said is far more important than the game." And so it was a wonderful comment from his coach and his man.
And was this after the Ice Bowl, Jerry?
Yes.
Yeah, after that game, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, Dick's, can't think of the guy. One of the guys that was a announcer.
Tom Brookshire?
Brookie
was interviewed with people in the locker room.
Brookie came over to me and asked me about Coach Lombardi, and I responded with that comment, and I didn't know where I was going, but I tried to set the record straight.
I've never heard anyone describe Lombardi better than a story you told me years and years ago. It was about where Lombardi almost broke you on the practice field. You had a terrible day, terrible practice. He was all over you and came up here to the locker room. Tell us a story about that moment.
Well, I made a couple mistakes, and
you were a fairly young player at the time, right?
It was, you know, it wasn't glaring, but it was stupid. And I'm wondering if I'm going to get away with it. And I look up, and he's running across the field toward me. Now, he's been 50 yards away or something, but he saw me, and he gets about 10 inches from my nose, and he says, "Mister, the concentration period of a college student, 5 minutes, high school is 3 minutes, kindergarten is 30 seconds, and you don't have that? So where's that put you?" Put me checking my shoe shine, right? And I am just about dead. I'm so disappointed, and the guys are giggling, and they're laughing, and they're enjoying my misery. And so I go up in the locker room, and Coach stays out with Bart and the wide receivers working on pass patterns, and I shuck my hat off and my shoulder pads and chin on my hand, elbow on my knee, checking the carpet, studying the pattern of the carpet, wondering what the hell I'm going to do next, because I'm never going to be able to play for this guy. I'm done here. This is the end of my Green Bay experience. And I've been there probably for about an hour. He's been out working with Bart, and he comes in the locker room, and he sees me way down at the end of the locker room, and he comes by, and he messes up my hair, and he slaps me on the back and neck, and he says, "Son, one of these days you're going to be the best guard in football." It just blew me up. It was such an incredibly positive comment after a very negative situation, and so I believed in him. I didn't believe he dealt in baloney and nonsense, and so I decided I was going to try to be the best guard in the NFL, so I wouldn't disappoint him. And Forrest Gregg and I started running at top speed. Everywhere I went, I was the first guy there, except for Forrest. He ran with me, and the two of us would be the best first guys there. So it was a tremendous impetus to my game, and I went from a level of 60, 70, 75% effort to 99, right? And I never looked back.
That story captures the essence of Lombardi, the coach and teacher, and human.
Yeah.
I mean, Jerry, I've never heard a story told by anybody. You and I have talked this story many times, sometimes to groups like this, but that captures who Lombardi was and why he was successful.
You think about it years later, and he has chewed half the guys out. But two things. He took time, whether it's a meeting, a practice, or whatever it happened to be, to make up for it before you left the locker room or before you left the field. He'd come by, "Oh, I didn't mean you," and he'd slap you on the head, unless he really wanted to get rid of you, and then he wouldn't come by at all. He's out of there, right? But he had a way of making up to you, and he chewed your tail so bad that you never wanted to endure that again, right? That's enough of that, and I don't want that. So I'm going to really bust my hump and do whatever I can do to play well and to make him comfortable and make him happy.
Jerry, without that experience you just described, which happened early in his tenure here, relatively early in your career in Green Bay,
Mm-hmm.
would you ever have that ring on your left hand without that moment?
I don't believe so, Wade. I don't believe so. Normally, when you get on the field, you come off the field, you're almost totally exhausted, right? And so you save a little bit. You maybe go 80%, maybe 85, but you save something so you can survive, right? But with him, you didn't save anything. And Forrest Gregg and I used to race each other when we were running the dummies or whatever the hell we were doing. We were just giggling and top far ahead of everybody else because we put every ounce of energy into it. And it was rewarded, you know, he rewarded you for doing well and making things happen. So you got in the habit of, I had one more story in the middle of this, but remember where we are. I had a intestinal operation, and I was a pretty sick fella. I went to Mayo. They worked on my intestines. I ran a stick in my groin when I was about 16, 15 years old. Came almost out my back. 14 years later, we find 3 or 4 slivers that are 3 to 4 inches long and have been in the back and the intestines for 14 years. And so we're having trouble with it again. And so we operate on it, and the intestinal operation, the stitching burst that filled the abdominal cavity with stool. So I had like 103 fever, and I was a really sick puppy. So Mayo kept me in the hospital for a couple of weeks, and then I came home. I weighed 179. And Henry Jordan, my neighbor, carried me from the car to my car, or from the airport out to my car. Just picked me up in his arms and carried me like a baby. So I spent about 3 months with the colostomy and trying to figure out how to live with it and what to do with it and how to get rid of it and all that. And finally, Dr. Brault, who was here in Green Bay, operated on me and found the sticks and closed it up, and it healed. And a month later, he pats me on the back and the bottom and says, "Go get him," right? So I go to Coach Lombardi and I say, "Coach, I'm ready to sign my contract. Jerry, I can't count on you. I want you to go home. I can't count on you. Just, we'll take care of your salary, we'll take care of your finances, we'll take care of everything. Just go home." And I said, "Coach, I can't go home. If I go home, it's over. I give up, it's over." And, "Well, I can't count on you." "Well, I'm counting on me." "Yeah, well, I can't count on you. I'm gonna put you with the defense. I always want to play defense anyway." So I'm with the defense now. And I get on the practice field, our first day of practice, and we run 3 laps to kind of loosen up. And I run a half a lap. I can't breathe. My lungs have seized up, and I'm just out of air, and I'm standing there gasping. And Don Chandler comes by. "What's wrong, pal?" He says, "What did you do?" I said, "I ran a half a lap." He said, "Well, I'm a kicker, and I don't have to do any of this stuff, so I'll run the other 2.5 laps for you." So he ran 2.5 laps. He comes back and he said, "Let's go over by the tower and we'll do our calisthenics." So we go over by the tower, and he said, "Now, if we're gonna do 50 push-ups and you can only do 5, I'll do 45. Again, I don't have to do this, but I'll do what you can't do." So he sat beside me doing the calisthenics for 36 days. And after the 36 days, 6th day, I was able to do all the calisthenics. And I was back to about 240, 245.
Wow.
And the coach put me back on the offense. But without Don Chandler and his help and his guidance, I'd have probably still been on the field.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a story, man. But at first it was incredible. You had those slivers in your body all those years.
I was chasing a calf. We had a cow and a calf, and I was privileged to milk that cow for about 40 years, and seemed like I wanted to shoot her after that. But was chasing my dad again was that 6'5" gentleman, and you didn't want the calf to be out of the pen and running around and Charlie come home and wail your backside, right? So I'm chasing the calf and I'm reaching out for it. I'm trying to grab it by the tail and I'm gonna put it in the pen and go to the beach. And the calf steps on a 1x6 and splinters it. And the flat end stayed against the ground, and the sharp spear-shaped end catches me just above the leg, in the groin. And it comes about a half inch from coming out my back. So I lay down and wait for the doc, and the doc is downtown waiting for me. So after about an hour, we call the doc again and say, what's going on? Well, we're the substitute doc here, and he's waiting for you, and well, you know, we have a problem here, and we think he ought to come out here. So he did, and the thing kind of healed up. There was a muscle, or a sliver lodged next to my spine that was probably 8, 10, 12 inches. That may be in the Hall of Fame here, but it was on display for a while. But it almost came out my back, and yeah. So I was in difficult straits. I hate to do this, but I got another story. I shot myself.
You don't mind, do we?
I shot myself with a 10-gauge double-barrel shotgun after I ran the stick in my groin, right? So I am waiting on a rock for a buddy of mine who's hunting with me, but he wants to borrow somebody's boat that he doesn't know. And I don't want to do that, so I'm sitting on a rock waiting for him to get done running around the river. And I have my grandpa's shotgun, and I'm rolling moss down off the rock. And I've been there a couple hours, and so I rolled most of the moss down, and there was a piece about 8, 10 feet away, and grabbed the barrel of the shotgun, not by the butt of the shotgun, but by the barrel. They had those little rabbit ear triggers on it, and I went boom, and it blew the arm half off and got in my side, the rest of it, right? So we go through that whole process, and the doc comes into my bedroom at the hospital, and he takes his pen out, and he draws a line on my arm. And I go, no, doc, no. He goes, Jerry, any complications, any problems, anything at all, we take it right there. So I was fortunate enough that we didn't have any infection or anything else. So now track season comes along, and I don't want to be a cripple. I can't open my hand, I can't use my fingers, but I can still throw the shot put and the discus, and I want to compete. So I throw it well enough to get invited to the state tournament down in Boise. It's 300, 400 miles south of us. So we get down there, we're warming up, and after about an hour, the loudspeaker gives us one of those, and now from Sands Point, Idaho, Jerry Kramer. And I throw, and it goes about 30 feet. Now the judges are standing out at 50 feet, right? They're waiting to mark it at 50 feet, and I throw it at 30, and they can't find it. They can't find the indentation. So, well, it was way up there. Well, you gotta mark it. Well, I didn't see it, but it was way up there. There's a bunch of indentations up there, and 15 minutes of that, they say, well, we gotta give him another throw. And so they come over and tell me they're gonna give me another throw. So now I'm angry. I'm embarrassed. I am really angry. And so I'm gonna take it out on that shot put. And I get in the ring and I throw it, and it goes 51-10. And I set a new state record. I broke a 17-year state record, but it crystallized the anger, and it made me play with anger from that point on. I would imagine that Merlin Olsen or one of my defensive tackles, Nomalini or Karras, whoever it was, had burned my house, shot my dog, killed my kids, raped my wife, you know, and they're gonna pay. And I don't want to talk to anybody. I'm in the locker room like this. I'm angry and I'm mad and I'm boiling it. And so I won't say anything to anybody. I won't talk, and I go out on the field, and the first thing I want to see is that defensive tackle, and I want to bust him because he had just destroyed my life. And I played with that. I mean, I played with that for years, and never really changed it a great deal.
I had no idea you had such an ability to try to kill yourself. I mean, that's quite a revealing. And you did a terrible job, Jerry. You're still here.
I tried.
Well, try better next time.
I will.
You know, I just from the book. I mean, it's Saturday night before the Western Conference Championship game in Milwaukee County Stadium. By the way, that's a story in itself. I don't know how Lombardi got away with it, but the Packers qualified for the playoffs. They're going to have 2 playoff games at home. Not because they had the best record. It was just the way the league stacked it up at that time. There was no tiebreakers or any crap like that. So the Packers know they're going to have 2 games if they win the first one. And so Lombardi says, well, we'll play the first game in Milwaukee and the second game in Green Bay. So there's no guarantee you don't win the first game.
You don't have a game.
There's no ice bowl. So I remember you at dinner in Milwaukee. You guys used to stay at the Pfister, I believe. Did you ever get haunted down there, by the way? You ever seen the ghost down there in the Pfister? No?
No.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess you have to have faith. But no, that's a haunted building.
We did stay at the Pfister.
Oh, yeah. We stay there all the time. Great old hotel. But you're out to dinner, and Merlin Olsen and the Rams happen to be in the same restaurant you described. Merlin was very nice and great guy, great person. Come over and shakes Jerry's hand a little bit. You kind of didn't want that because he was taking the edge off of you.
Well, the instant replay undressed me a little bit, and a couple. Merlin was one of the guys that was a very bright guy and a great competitor, but we had another guy that was Charles Kruger.
Yep.
And Charlie Kruger played for the San Francisco 49ers, and he had played with me in the college all-star game. And Charlie was a little late getting to the college all-star game, like 3 days. And Mrs. Kruger would call, and she'd say, Charles Kruger, no ma'am, Charlie's not here. 15 minutes, is Charles Kruger, oh ma'am, he's not here. 3 days, about every 15 minutes, she was calling for Charles Kruger. So when Charlie finally came to camp, everybody in the camp called him Charles Kruger. And so I'm writing instant replay, and we're playing San Francisco here in Green Bay. And I warm up the first half, and I go through all my machinations and whatnot, and I start to go into the locker room, and I feel a presence behind me. There's somebody really close to my neck and breathing right down my neck. And I resisted, and finally I turn around, and it's Kruger. And he looks at me and he says, is Gerald Kramer lying? Damn you, Charlie. I've been preparing this for a week, and you just blew it all up.
It's amazing what pro athletes do for the mental part of it. You also described you used to go to bed the night before a big game and picture every play and how you were blocking this guy and this guy and this guy, and by the end of the play, you blocked everybody on defense type of thing. I mean, it's all part of it, wasn't it?
It was all part of trying to do things like that. I wanted to knock the quarterback down and then go on to the next guy and maybe the next guy. And it's really difficult to do. The timing is difficult, and often the defensive ball player doesn't want you to knock him down.
Yeah.
So you go ahead anyway. But to knock down 2 or 3 guys on a play made my day. That just really made my day feel like I'd done got out in front of the Goldilocks and did some good.
Did some good. We got a couple of questions here. One question, you and Luke Rosa had many similarities in your playing career. Did you ever have a friendship with him during or after your playing career? Lou was the great kicker.
Lou the Toe.
Lou, yeah.
Lou the Toe Groden. He was a kicker, straight ahead kicker, and that's before the invasion of the
Soccer.
Europeans and the soccer kickers who kicked side foot. The straight on kick was what everybody did. And I did that in college, and when Horning got hurt, I kicked with Greenback. And I remember vividly the '62 season in New York. Yankee Stadium was such an awesome venue. It just world championships and fights and baseball games and everything you could imagine had been held at Yankee Stadium, and it was like an incredibly popular place. So I'm the kicker, and we got 80,000 people, and I am just a little bit nervous, and it's blowing, the wind is blowing about 40 miles an hour, and we try a field goal from 30 yards or something like that, and I'm doing the fundamentals of kicking. I am going to keep my head down. One of the worst things you can do is come up early to see where the ball is. So I'm going to kick, and Bart's holding the ball, and I kick, and I look at the dirt, and I take a couple steps before I look up. And when I look up, the ball is outside the goalpost, and the referee has got his arms in the air, raising his arms. And I say to Bart, "What the hell is he doing?" Bart says, "Shut up and get off the field." Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So we kicked 3 field goals that day, and the last one was about maybe 35 to 40, somewhere there. But I aimed 10 yards outside the goalpost, and the wind brought it right down the middle.
Yeah, the old Yankee Stadium. I remember it as a kid.
Well,
Growing up on the East
the
Coast.
beautiful thing about it was I got the game ball. The players voted me the game ball. The officials and the other folks voted Nitschke the game Corvette. Wait a minute. Do I have a choice here?
Sounds like you got the short
Yeah,
straw.
I felt like it.
But that was like, I want to say, was that the 1962 championship
Yes.
game at Yankee Stadium?
Yes.
And if you've told me, and others who played in that game told me, that was, the wind was whipping through there. And the old Yankee Stadium was kind of, folks, like almost a horseshoe, and then you had the bleachers out here in center field, and the winds would come sweeping through that whole stadium, and a huge cavernous stadium is a, wonderful ballpark. But
When we went in at halftime, our benches were blowing in the wind, and they had blown over and gone out 20, 25 yards on the field. And the jackets were all blown over the place, and towels and everything. It was just a mess. So the wind wreaked havoc with that.
yeah, now to kick, as you did, kick field goals in that game and get a game ball for that, that's
Well,
tremendous.
you gotta believe, if you're gonna aim 10 yards right, you gotta believe that wind is gonna be blowing pretty
You
hard.
better hope it is, huh?
Yeah, so.
Thank God that wind tricked the kicker over here the other day, huh? Another question we have, this might be obvious, maybe not. You might tell us something we've never heard. Your most memorable play or moment as a Packer?
Moment or play?
Either one.
I had a wonderful memory of Alex Karras trying a field goal from 50 yards out, our last game against Detroit, my last game. Alex comes through late, hits me with a forearm, knocks my helmet off, says, "Stick that in your book, you blah, 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 blah." Remember that very well. This last field goal in Yankee Stadium was a highlight because it put us 2 scores on front. We were 16-7 with that kick, so we knew that we had a championship after that. And that was in Yankee Stadium. It was such an incredible venue, you know, childhood things you've seen. And Coach Lombardi actually came over to me before the game, and he said, "Jerry, take some of the younger boys and walk them around the stadium a little bit." Well, hell, I was a younger boy myself. Wasn't that old, but I took Tommy Joe and 3 or 4 of the kids and walked out in the stadium. Tommy Joe, "Golly, this place is sure hold a lot of high." He's a Texas boy.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Oh, my. The last question I have here from the crowd, what do you hope your legacy will be as a Packers player? Have you thought much about that?
You know, I learned so many wonderful things from Coach Lombardi. And there's a handful of words that can convey a attitude and an effort, like commitment, preparation, consistency, discipline, pride, character, tenacity, grit. Those kind of ideas will put you on the right track. If you take your shot, do your thing, and pay the price for achievement. There's a very definite price for it, and a lot of people want to pay it, and a lot of people don't want to pay it. But we wanted to pay it, and we wanted to win, and we did win. So those lessons apply to the business world, they apply to life, they apply to almost anything you want to do. And so you can, if you will, which is one of my films that we just issued last year. I'm a sophomore in high school, and I had grown about 1 foot, and I was clumsier than clumsy. What's next after that? But I was there. So my line coach comes by and he picks up my hand and holds it out and he goes, "Son, you got big hands. You got big feet. You're gonna grow into them one of these days. And you can be a great football player." He hesitated a moment. He said, "You can if you will." I said, "Can what? If I will, what? What are you talking about?" And he just gave me a kind of a Mona Lisa smile and walked away and let me think about it. And so I think that applies to virtually everyone. If you want it, you can have it, but you gotta pay for it. There's a price to pay for achievement. There's a price to pay for success. There's a price to pay for getting ahead and making your life good. But you can if you will. Very much so.
I want to touch on a couple of other things in that for a long time, and a good friend of mine who was actually in my wedding, a guy by the name of Rick Goslin was a columnist with that Dallas Morning News and was one of the outstanding national writers in recent years in the National Football League, and he's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame himself. But he and I would talk for the longest time, years and years, about how is Jerry Kramer not in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. I wanted to ask you about the way you handled it so well publicly, but how difficult was it for you to wait as long as you did to get into the Hall of Fame?
Well, I went to a couple ball games where they were picking the Hall of Famers, and I know Dick Shack had some shirts printed, and we went to dinner the night before and celebrated, and it didn't happen. And then Art Daly came down, and it didn't happen. And he said, "Jerry, I had like a 2-foot putt, and I whiffed it. I didn't present the case well." So I go home, and ultimately we had 11 nominations and no invitations. And so I am angry first, and then I go from anger to, hey, it's been a wonderful ride. You've been very fortunate to have played with the Green Bay Packers and a man like Coach Lombardi. So if you don't make the Hall of Fame, it's been a hell of a ride. You've been very fortunate in your career and your life. So, okay, I'm gonna get by this and I'm gonna get past this, and if it happens, wonderful. If it doesn't happen, wonderful. I'm gonna enjoy the life, enjoy what I had and what was in front of me. So it took a couple years for me to come to that accommodation and to make that decision to not be angry and not be frustrated and not vent my spleen and all my anger and whatnot. So, and it was maybe a year later or two that I got nominated. But I just decided I was not going to make a fool of myself, and if they didn't nominate me, maybe I didn't believe it, or maybe I didn't deserve it. So I accepted it as it was and went on down the road.
But there were a lot of people, Rick being one, and then your daughter and your family got behind the effort to get Jerry Kramer into the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's something, folks, that should have happened many years ago. Rick always used to say to me, he said, Jerry's the only guy from the All-60s team not in the Hall of Fame. How could that be? And so it was really, without getting into why or anything like that, it was really, perplexing for all of us who follow pro football, who knew of you and your career and the whole bit. But there was a great effort to get you into the Hall of Fame, and you had to be wonderfully appreciative of that effort, especially coming from your family.
Yeah, once it finally happened, it was like Christmas and birthday and holidays and everything all rolled into one. It was just an incredible experience, and to be in Canton, on the stage with the guys, with all of the ball players in the hall was awesome, just awesome, and it was a wonderful, wonderful feeling, and I'm awfully pleased to be there and to have been a part of that. So the Cowboys and the Cleveland Browns and the folks that didn't want me to go there finally wore out, I think, and we made it. But it was an incredibly joyous occasion.
Well, the fact that it happened, certainly we could sit here and say, well, it should have happened decades ago. That doesn't matter. It happened, and that's all that matters, right?
Yeah.
So you get into the Hall of Fame, and the Hall of Fame weekend, the whole bit, and all the parties and everything, and then you come back later in the season to Green Bay, and they put your name up in the Ring of Honor. How emotional was that? In the stadium you started, you know what I mean?
Aaron Rodgers came over to me just before that and said, hey, and congratulations, and 2 or 3 of the other players came over, and my kids were with me, my family was with me, I think all the kids, 6 of them, and it was just a awesome experience. I run out of words and run out of superlatives to try to explain it. But it was, the whole stadium went nuts, and 60, 70, 80,000 people cheering for this fat lineman, right? So it was a wonderful experience, and I really didn't know how to handle it and how to take it in, and just enjoyed it. It was like a carnival ride or something, and it was wonderful, and it was over, and then you go back to real life.
Jerry, just thinking about your career and everything else, and I was just a kid following you when you were playing, but and maybe through the book, you and Dick Schaap, and the books you wrote, you were the first celebrity offensive lineman in the history of the National Football League, I believe. You know what I mean? You're the first guy that the kids growing up, we all knew who Jerry Kramer was. Seriously, and maybe that was a factor also.
I wouldn't be surprised at that. I really would.
You know what I mean?
And I think I've always thought maybe there was a guy over in Cleveland that was a very negative writer, and he didn't like Green Bay at all. And there was a couple guys in Dallas that didn't like Green Bay at all. And I'm sure there were a couple guys in several other teams that were sick of watching Green Bay win championships, right? So,
and too many Packers in the Hall of Fame off of that.
And the Packers were going into the Hall of Fame. And so they were, for a while there, they were the news, and they were everything that was great. But I had my daughter Alicia, without my knowing it, got a call from the governor's aide, and he wanted to help get letters for my induction into the Hall of Fame. So Alicia worked with him, and Merlin Olsen and Alec Karras and about 20 or 30 guys wrote letters, and it was a wonderful event also to have those guys stand up for me. And so that kind of started the ball rolling, and we went on ahead after that and went on and made it into the Hall.
Yeah.
So it was a hell of a ride and a wonderful time, and I'm a very happy camper.
Yeah, I would imagine, and you should be, you really should be. I guess to kind of wrap it up, Jerry, you know, first off, it's so good to see you back in Green Bay.
Great to be back.
No, but I mean, you know, what's it like to come back after all these years?
Well, you know, we had a couple functions, and having people come in to see a lineman is kind of a unusual twist, right? Normally the quarterbacks and the running backs and those kind of people get all the attention, and your lineman is who? So I have been very fortunate with the books and the stories and the whole thing, and the coach and the journey. And it's just been I grew up in a town, I was born in a town of 200 people in eastern Montana. And we moved from there to a town of 3,000 people in northern Idaho, which was a monster move, right? And then we moved to a team that had 50,000 people in it, in Green Bay. So I was very much at home here, very comfortable here. And people were great, always great. No matter, you could go shopping, and if 10 people didn't say hey and congratulations or good job or something like that, then something was wrong. But the Packer fans have, without question, been the greatest fans in the game, and have been for 100 years or so, right?
104.
So I was really, really fortunate to be able to come here instead of Detroit or LA or New York or God knows other 18 teams, right?
Worked out pretty well for you guys up here.
Yeah, it worked out very well. And we were closer. I mean, we were, you know, if you went somewhere, probably Horning and McGee were gonna be there.
Before you.
Yeah, and that was wonderful. That was great. Love Paul, love Max, and all my teammates. I just really enjoyed them. There must have been a couple of those defensive tackles I didn't love, but we won't mention them.
No need to do that.
Yeah, and Fuzz, you know, there's so many, you're so tight, and you depend on one another, and you kind of, your life hinges on whether Horning is gonna make this kick, or Fuzz is gonna make this block, or Max is gonna catch the ball. And when they don't disappoint you, when they perform, and they perform well, at big time, it's just a wonderful feeling to be a part of that. And it makes you want to perform also. It makes you want to do 100% blocking job and take care of business and don't let the team down. That was the biggest thing about the whole organization, was don't let the team down. So it's just been about 50 years of hallelujah. And what a fun ride, and what a wonderful night tonight. And thank you, thank you, thank you.
Jerry, thank you. We enjoyed it. It's
Thank
always
you.
good to see you, man.